Welcome to Yin Yoga. So in today's practice, a few things that you might want to have either on your mat or near your mat. One is we're not going to really get off the ground much, either on a reclined or we might be on our hands and knees. So putting something a little softer either on your mat or over the surface that you're practicing on might be a good idea for some comfort. And of course, bolster, blocks, low block. These can be substituted by pillows, books of varying heights if you have them, so that could also be your options there as well. Now we'll start lying down. The option that I'll choose, and there's a variety of options to start in, but the one I'll choose is just a gentle passive front body opener. I don't want to say gentle because in different bodies it might have a different experience and gentle might not be the descriptor there. But how I'll start today is by pushing just gently down through the soles of my feet enough to lift my bum and place the block just underneath my pelvis. And then I'll extend my legs forward and just relax them. So there's a back bend here. Again, depending on how this back bend feels in your body, you may want to start like this. You may want to just place your bum right on the ground and just start just like almost in a Shavasana position. Take a moment here to tuck your shoulder blades a little closer to your spine. Let your arms come open and palms turn upwards. Take a deep breath in through your nose. And then open your mouth and let it go. Close your lips softly, your eyes the same way. Breathe in and out through your nose. And try to focus on the area that's elevated right now. So the space from your belly button, moving downwards across the front of your pelvis, of course on both sides, and to your thighs. And try to relax that area. Very active relaxation. I know it sounds a bit, just like a bit of a paradox, but you are actively intending to relax that area specifically. And on your exhalations, on that side of your breath cycle, your nervous system calms a little bit. So it's on your exhalations that you may find that the feeling of ease or relaxation is more noticeable. We'll stay here for another minute or so. Just try to keep your breaths comfortably deep. Your exhalations comfortably long. And in every breath cycle, try to soften your body a little bit more into the support that's underneath it, whether you have the block or it's just your mat. And one thing I also encourage for every class, even when you wake up in the morning, it's a good idea to set an intention. But we'll say just for the practice today. Let's set your intention for your practice. I always like to include some kind of language around just being kind in the internal chatter that goes on in your practice. Sometimes I find I can be a little harsh in the headspace and say things that are just even a little bit mean to myself. So as mentioned, I always include just something about kindness in my intentions. That's an offer. Bend your knees and walk your feet a little closer to your bum. If you do have the block underneath, just push down so you can lift your bum, move the block over to a side. Bring your right knee up into your chest, your hands around your shin, and pull your thigh in. Bring your nose up towards your knee. And just start to move your foot. You can start with some movement, circular, clockwise, and counterclockwise movement, and then anything else that just naturally wants to happen with your toes and your ankles. And then lower your right foot. Bring your left knee up, take your hands to your shin, and now hug it in, and do the same thing here. Certainly if bringing your shoulders off your mat and nose towards your knee doesn't feel good for you, just keep them on your mat. And then move your toes, your foot. And then lower your left foot by your right to start to rock your knees gently from side to side. Adding the turn of your head just to loosen up the tissues very gently in and around the upper part of your spine. And the next time you start to flow your knees over towards the right, do the same with your head and then place your left hand in front of you and push up until you can come to your seat. Now from here, spin right around and come to all fours. And we will get into the stillness of yin pretty quickly here, but just before that, I'd like you to take some time from the tabletop position just to move your spine. And again, there's no, let's call it specific pattern I'd like you to follow. Just move in a way that you feel, again, that you're warming your spine up to a small degree. Bring your right knee up to the right edge of your mat, and then lean over onto your outer right hip, right thigh, and scooch your right foot forward so your shin is parallel to the front edge of your mat, or reasonably parallel to the front edge of your mat. Of course, keeping blocks or props handy so you can bring the ground up to you is always some advice or some guidance that I give. But we'll fold forward over top of our right shin. Now here, folding directly forward over your right shin, or maybe it's a little more towards your knee joint, or perhaps to get a little stretch in your side body, it's closer towards your right foot. So there's some variance on how you place your torso here. Just find what works for you. And fold towards the ground, place your forearms. Again, they could be grounded or they could be on blocks here as well. Now when you are in the posture, you have some options, as you always do. But in this case, with the position of your head, you can just let your head hang, so relaxing the muscles of your neck. That may not feel so good for you, so making sure that the neck muscles are active enough to keep your head lifted, or you could even place a block, depending on how far you've folded forward, a block underneath your forehead. And in that way, you can keep your head supported, but the muscles of your neck not active or relaxed here. When you've placed yourself in the position that you are intending to hold, just try to relax muscular energy as much as you can, the muscular energy that's not needed to support the pose. So any downward push, maybe it's from your forearms or you're finding in other places of your body, you can relax away from that and just sink and soften more deeply into your mat. And once again, your exhalations are very key for that quality to arise. That every time you breathe out, a little more intention and just relaxing, easing the body. If your mind has just become lost in thought, or you're even just disconnected from your body, from your practice, and thinking about other things, there's again an opportunity there. And the opportunity is to strengthen your practice of concentration, your practice of mindfulness to a degree, but being aware of what you're doing, or redirecting your attention to where you had intended to put it in the first place, and that's being embodied or in practice. Very slowly start to come out of the shape. You can push your hands into your mat or your blocks to lift your torso away from your right thigh, and then push to all fours. Bring your right knee back and place your left knee by your right knee. Exhale, round your back, pull your belly in, chin to chest, and lengthen down through your tailbone. Breathe in, lower your belly, lift your head and tail. And do that one more time. And then place your left knee just up your left edge, the left edge of your mat. Lower down onto your outer hip and outer thigh. And once you've taken the load out of your knee, then scooch your left foot a little further forward. So again, your shin is more or less parallel with the front edge of your mat. Try to position yourself so you can fold forward over top of your thigh, but again, just remember there's some variance. It can be a little closer to your knee or towards your foot, depending on what you're feeling here. And then bring the ground up to you using your blocks. And place your forearms on the ground. If you have your hands clasped, it's pretty easy to do that here, but have your hands clasped. Sometimes you can bring a lot of energy into your hands, so you start to really, it's almost like you're choking the life out of something. Try to relax your hands, even part them. Bring your thumb and index finger very gently to touch. And try to keep that gentleness between those two digits. One of the reasons I really enjoy this posture is Pigeon Pose is a posture that doesn't work as well for my body, given just a history of knee injury on the left side. So this posture allows you to get a very similar stretch to Pigeon Pose without having your knee joint just compressed and perhaps even twisted in the way that Pigeon Pose can sometimes do. Clasping and being very energetic with your hands can happen, but it can also happen in your teeth. So if you're clenching your teeth and you feel that there's a hardness around your jawline, just try to place a little bit of space between your teeth, soften your jaw. But you can also take those signs or those actions as signs that maybe you're a little too deep into the pose. And your nervous system sometimes will, again, put forward just a little intensity in places. Could be hands, could be mouth, facial features in general. And those signs just let you know that your nervous system is starting to, I don't want to say panic, but for lack of a better word, your nervous system's showing a little bit of a panic sign. Come out of the pose. Once again, bring your hands down in front of you and push your torso away from your left shin. Come to all fours. From all fours, you can be either on your palms or fists if your wrists get sore from all fours, or with your palms on your mat. Exhale, round your back. Push your middle back up toward the ceiling. And inhale to lower the space right around your belly button, but lift the ends of your spine. Exhale. And inhale. And then from here, place your right foot forward now towards the top right corner of your mat. And walk your foot a little wider so your knee is wider than your hip. Now notice the change in the angle of your thigh bone. Match the top of your foot, the angle of your foot, with the angle of your thigh bone. And then turn towards your mat. Once again, coming down, you can find support having your forearms on blocks. There's a few different heights that might be supportive. I don't know if the highest one would be. It might be a little bit rocky, but there's other two lower settings on your blocks would work. Certainly getting your forearms to the ground if the mobility in your hip allows for that. And then sink into this lizard pose or dragon pose, and it's often called in yin. And here's another area, be very aware of your hands, clasping your hands, or pushing your forearms into your mat, or into your blocks. Try to even allow your upper arms to sink a little bit more deeply into your shoulder sockets. And again, the option to hang your head or to support the weight of your head with a little more strength coming through your neck. For a few moments, if you'd like to rock a little from side to side, it might feel nice to bring some very subtle, very gentle movement into your hip here. And then pause in stillness. And try to even exaggerate a few breaths deep down into your belly so you can feel some pressure gets put into your hip and lower parts of your abdomen through your breathing. Notice if you're still experiencing the posture, if you've just gotten a little lost in thought. Again, that getting lost in thought can be a frustrating thing to continually have happen, but I would frame it more again as an opportunity, the opportunity to redirect your attention. Bring your hands underneath your shoulders, push away from the ground, and then extend your right leg back. And lift your hip, bring your knee forward towards your right tricep. So big knee circles here, just a couple of them. And then place your right knee back down and bring your left foot forward. Now, again, walk it towards the left edge of your mat. Heel toe your foot a little wider. For me, it just feels good to have half my foot on, half my foot off my mat. I've got now my left knee wider than my left hip. And then slowly, again, find a little movement if it helps to ease you into the posture. And in a posture like this, I always notice the difference I have in mobility from hip to hip. I used to have an office job, believe it or not, and when I sat cross-legged, I always thought that made me look a little smarter than I actually was or am, but when I sat cross-legged, I always sat with my right leg crossed over my left leg, so consequently my right hip feels a lot more open in certain postures, this being one of them, than my left hip does. Take your knee wider than your hip, and you can even just take a brief moment to think about what a normal day typical day of yours would hold. And for many of us, it doesn't hold a lot of lateral opening or movement of our legs. We go front to back when we're walking, or certainly running, or cycling. It's moving the front and back plane of our body. So here we're just taking the knees wider than the hips, just to help preserve certainly range of motion and the openness of the soft tissues around the hip here as well. If you've been to any of my classes, live classes, you know that I frequently joke about my experience in French immersion. I took 12 years of French immersion. I was actually quite fluent, quite good, but I graduated a long time ago, and I really haven't spoken French since. So I'm reduced now to je ne sais pas and pourquoi and maybe où est la toilette, and that's about all I got. The last one being obviously very important, but out of 12 years, that's what I've maintained, just because I didn't use my language skills for a long time. And I think that's very sad, but your mobility, range of motion, it's similar in that if you don't lose it, your body just gradually stops to, or stops being able to move through that range of motion. You start to take shorter steps or not be able to move your knees quite as wide outside of your hips. And all of this reduction in range of motion, I think, can easily be equated to a reduction in quality of life as well. Let's take 2 more breaths here. Trying to expand these last 2 breaths. So you feel, again, a lengthy inhalation, pressure in your rib cage, and an extended exhalation. And 1 more. At the conclusion of your exhalation, start to bring your hands back underneath your shoulders. Push away from the ground. Nothing happens very quickly in yin, so take your time. You can wiggle your foot loose, extend your left leg back, and again, a couple of knee circles here. Bring your knee forward and down, and then 1 last time. Okay. Take your knees a little wider than your hips, again, with your toes behind you to touch. Move your bum back towards your heels. We'll take child's pose, and not a long time in it, about a minute or so. Again, you can place your forehead on blocks. You can make little fists and place your forehead on fists. You can use a bolster and lie over top of the bolster if you'd like as well. So we're just finding whatever works best for you. And your arms can either be extended out as mine are, or you can thread them either through your inner thighs or around your outer thighs. From child's pose, come back up to all fours. Take your knees back underneath your hips. And then walk your hands. And we're coming into a back bend here. So again, your props can be very handy. I'm going to be putting my forearms on a bolster. You're welcome to put them directly on your mat. The higher essentially you lift your chest, the more your hips stay grounded, you'll feel more compression in your back. So as long as that compression is a healthy thing for your body to experience, then this is a healthy posture for you. But walk your hands forward, place your forearms down so your elbows are underneath your shoulders. And you can modify this pose fairly easily by either moving your chest onto your bolster, so lowering your chest, compressing your spine in that way. You can place your hands in front of your bolster and push your hands into your mat to lift your chest just a little bit higher. So you can play with that here. And just relax the muscles of your neck, or support the weight of your head. Whatever feels better for you. Relax your legs. Let your heels turn out. And your glutes soften. often all language, the postures is applying stress to the tissues. And while stress isn't a word that people generally like to hear, it is very important for your tissues for stress to be mindfully applied. Those stresses being tension or compression or shear. But compression, for example, is again a stress on your tissues, but your harder tissues, your bone tissues, need to be compressed in order for them to stay strong and to get stronger. So as mentioned, when you do compress your skeleton, as long as it's mindfully applied, meaning you can move into the compression but also take yourself out of it when needed, that stress helps to make your bones harder and certainly healthier. One of the issues they have sending people up in space, and I don't anticipate I'm going to be getting this opportunity anytime soon, but because there's weightlessness, there's no pressure or compression on the skeleton, that astronauts can actually lose up to, I think it's like 30% of their bone density over a certain period of time being up in space. Again, not an issue many of us are going to face, I don't think. But if you happen to find yourself in space, then just be aware of that. The astronauts watching here, just be aware, okay? You may want to rethink your decision to go up in space now knowing this whole bone density thing. Lower your chest, could be to your bolster or your mat, depending on where you are. Just take a moment with just a reduced compression in your lower back, so let the sensations dissipate for a moment. Place your hands beside your bolster, even a little bit behind your bolster, and push into the ground. We'll come back to child's pose. So again, knees can be parted, they can be closer together, find what works for you. Now walk your hands over the top right corner of your mat, so you feel some tension down the left side of your torso. Walk your hands now to the opposite side of your mat. Just direct your breath and the sensation in towards the right side of your rib cage. Walk your hands back to the middle of your mat and come up to all fours. Here, just take your hips over to one side, sweep your feet around. Just come to sit in the middle of your mat, and if your props happen to be just at the front of your mat, just take at least one of the blocks with you. Now recline onto your mat, and we'll take an inversion. Now the offering here will be a supported inversion. You can keep your bum grounded here. It's less of an inversion, of course, but keep your bum grounded and extend your legs up towards the ceiling. You can lift your hips, would be the second option, support the lift of your hips either with something soft like a bolster or a couple of pillows, or you can use the block or a couple blocks if you'd like just a little more surface area. Here the option is to keep your feet grounded, but you are in an inversion because your hips are lifted higher than your heart and head, so there's this gentle downward slope from hips to heart and head here. And deepening the inversion slightly, but keeping it supported. Extend your legs up towards the ceiling. Make sure there's a softness about your knees, so not a lot of tension in the back of your legs, and not a lot of core strength that you feel needed to keep your legs up. And if you do feel either one of those qualities, just keep a little bit of a deeper bend in your knees. Your arms can stay on the ground, or with just enough energy to lift them. Extend your arms up towards the ceiling. Relax your wrists so you can see your palms. Relax your fingers and your face. Lower your arms, lower your feet. Just move the prop out from underneath. And extend your right leg forward towards the front of your mat. And bring your left knee up. So we'll take a twist towards the right side. With your right hand, guide your left knee over to that side, the right side of your mat. And you roll right over. Just allow your left shoulder to come off your mat if it feels it needs to. Roll right over so you can find then a little support underneath your left thigh or left shin. You can use, again, a block or two or a bolster. And then lower back to your mat, your torso, the back of your head if it's lifted. And extend your left arm out towards the left. Now, it might be just hanging there in space, your shoulder, if it's lifted off the ground. That's totally fine. You might be feeling just a nice passive stretch in the front of your shoulder that goes into your chest. But if it feels like you need to soften that area a little bit, just bend your elbow, place your hand on your hip, or you can place your hand just behind your sacrum on your mat. And your gaze can be upwards, or if it's comfortable for you to turn your head towards the left, turn towards the left. If you are looking towards the left, turn your gaze up and then slowly come back to center. If you do have a prop on the right side that you use, just shift it over to the left side. But before twisting to the left, I know for me, just taking a brief moment with my knees into my chest here, just almost like there's a symmetrical pose to reset my spine before twisting to the other side. Always feels just like I can get into the posture or into the twist a little more easily than if I just go from one side directly to the opposite one in the twist. And when we're ready to enter the pose, extend your left leg forward, bring your right knee up, and then guide it over towards the left side. And once again, if your right shoulder is coming off your mat, just let it come off your mat. Just scoot your left shoulder closer towards the left side. Keep your right leg supported with a block or a bolster. And then from here, decide whether extending your right arm out or keeping it closer to your hip or the ground feels better for you. Whatever works for your body. This is practice. And your gaze again, either upwards or turned towards your right hand. Deep breath in. A twist, breathe into your right side, exhale completely. And when you've finished your exhalation, very slowly, carefully unwind, bring yourself back to the middle of your mat. And once you've shifted your bum back to the middle of your mat, bring your knees or alternate knees can be brought up into your chest. They can be brought up alternately or at the same time, is what I meant to say. A little bit of movement. You can rock from side to side. Take a brief period of time in happy baby if you'd like. And from here, it is Shavasana. So prepare yourself for the final posture. You may want to slide a bolster underneath your knees. And if you find that when you are lying down, that the back of your head, it's almost like the top of your head is on your mat and you feel compressed in the back of your neck, then take, again, it could be just a small pillow or even this low block here, and just place it right behind your head or underneath your head so the muscles of your neck here can relax and not so compressed in your cervical spine. Exhale, take it right to the bottom, and when you're breathing in, breathe into your belly, breathe into your chest. For a brief moment at the top, hold your breath, and then open your mouth and let it all go. Softly close your lips and your eyes. And relax control of your breath if you notice that there's still a little effort in trying to do that. Like we did at the beginning of practice, trying to soften more deeply on your exhalations. And that practice applies here in Shavasana as well. So try to be very aware of your exhalations and relax into them as much as you can. With your in-breaths, there's this natural lift away from your mat. So your exhalations allow you to sink more deeply into it. Start to extend your arms towards the space behind you. Push forward with your toe mounds in front of you. Breathe in. Open your mouth and breathe out. And roll over onto your right side in the fetal position. And then push up off the side to your seat. Bring your palms together, your hands to your heart. Thank you very much for practicing with us. Namaste.